Hi, welcome. I am your host, Chris Starkey. This is the ultimate podcast for those event connectors, industry professionals looking for unique new ways to revolutionize what they're doing. And it's my job to have some amazing influencers on the show every single time we broadcast. So I am so lucky, unbelievably lucky today, because I have the Chief Revenue Officer from Meeting Professional International. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Rachel Benedick. Rachel, what's up?
Hi, Chris. Long time no see. It's
Yes,
so
yes,
good to
yes.
see you and hear that radio voice of yours. I love that.
I think I've known Rachel for over 20 years. She's had an
Yeah.
illustrious career at Visit Denver. We're both from Denver. Rachel, are you originally from Denver? You're originally from Denver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Oh, you're not?
You're the
Where are you
only
from
native
originally?
here. No. I am from Michigan. Michigan.
Uh-oh. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, Michigan,
Right over
Michigan.
here.
And you lived in Colorado for what, 20 plus years, right? 30 years?
Yes. Yeah, I moved here in 1995. So it's been a minute.
It has, and you've seen a lot of amazing changes along the way. And I'm going to get right into it because our listeners really want to
Yeah.
know what is going down in our economy. There's so many ifs out there right now. People saying yay, people saying nay. Right now, as of December 13th, the stock market is soaring. Everything's flowing, but there's absolutely hubbub out there that this is all going to come tumbling down in 2024 with lots of different variables. So that's my first question for you, knowing that you're about the revenue, about making that revenue happen. What's your take on 2024?
I think that it looks really good. And I think our media just loves to just grab onto a bad news story. And I think there's a lot of speculating with the upcoming election. But what's interesting with my role at MPI is we start working with our clients. So we have clients that are on all different sorts of budget cycles. Some people start in September, some start with the new year, some start in July. So we've been selling into 2024 for several months now. And I will tell you, it's really strong. So we will have probably more business on the books going into 24 than we did same time last year going into 23. So we're seeing strong buying cycles from our clients and the willingness to get out there and invest in in-person events, especially.
Well, you heard it here first from the Chief Revenue Officer at MPI. So highly encourage you to reach out to her email. And if something for some reason goes south, we'll make sure that we impart that email. I'm just joking, Rachel. That's
There
awesome,
you
though.
go.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Home address. You include the home address too. Yeah, that's perfect. Great.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So we're going to get right into it. So your job I'm going to ask you straight away as Chief Revenue Officer for Meeting Professional International, exactly what is in the job description? Well, what happens in your world?
Yeah. It's a great question, Chris. When I first got the call for this job, when I heard chief revenue officer, like a lot of people, I sort of thought finance. And you know me, and for those that are listening that know me, that's not exactly what fills my cup. However, the more we talked about it, it's an interesting title. And the reason they came up with it is because this position really oversees the departments that bring in the lion's share of the revenue for MPI. So I have the pleasure of working with our academy team, which is where all of our learning is happening, both online and digital, the pleasure of working with sales, and then also our foundation, which raises money and gives back to our industry in different ways through grants, scholarships, and research as well. So it's really the coming together of these big revenue generators for the organization is how they came up with that fancy chief revenue officer title.
I just loved how that just like naturally just flowed right out of your mouth. Like you almost like memorized that. That was awesome. I love that. Great job, Rachel.
It's
I'm going to call someone.
I'm in my 8th month. I'm in my 8th month, so I'm picking it up. I'm picking it up.
Killing it, killing it. Okay. So question number one. Question number one. So in terms of innovative revenue generation in your position at one of the top influencing entities in our industry, what unconventional methods have you found most effective for generating revenue in the meeting industry?
I love this question. And first of all, there's a little bit of a theme we'll talk about today, which is that what's old becomes new again. So I think sometimes it's hard to find like new ideas, right? That no one's ever heard of. There may be old ideas repurposed, or there are things we used to do and we look at differently. But I think one of the areas when I think about innovative revenue generation is consolidation and partnership. So I think that there's opportunities for us as an industry to partner more. I'm really proud at MPI, we have some really great partnerships. And I think there's such constraints on everyone's time right now. And I think that's one of the things that has really stayed from COVID. And I think it'll continue to stay, which is everyone's time is precious. It's hard to get people. I mean, people aren't in the office like they used to. So I always joke, it's like it's hard to get people out of their pajamas. It's hard to get people out. So there's all these sort of competitors that we have for time that if we could do some more effective partnerships within our industry, I think we would receive like a better bang for the buck. And I think you'd have this sort of coming together of different audiences, but people also still getting that thought leadership that each individual organization needs that's putting on the event. So I think that when I think about partnership, I just think that's our opportunity going forward because there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many months in a year. And right now it's packed with things going on.
Yeah, I love that you said that because one of the biggest struggles that most business owners like myself have experienced over the years is the gig mentality, where it's extremely difficult to
Yeah.
find solid, dependable, loyal employees.
Yeah.
And statistically, I've discovered that if you find a really solid partner, a partner that you can really latch on to, it's absolutely worth 1,000 great employees. So great strategy, Rachel. I love that to death in terms of revenue generation.
You hit on something, Chris, which we know is a real challenge too, which is workforce, and we may talk about that later. But I just wanted to share this with you because I think you and I can commiserate on this because we are both in our 50s now, so we are sort of becoming that. I don't, God forbid, like older generation. I don't know what it is, but when you talk about that gig economy and really getting people, loyal people, to come and work with your team, I think what fuels so much of that is back in the day, we had to worry about people's well-being from 8 to 5, right? During the work hours. And now as business operators, we really feel a pressure to be responsible for them 24/7. And I think
Mhm.
that's a shift and that's a difference that we're seeing in our both in our industry and just, society wide. So now we're becoming the wise old people. So we have a duty here to try to figure out how to cultivate that next generation.
Amen for that, sister. Okay, great. I love that. Love the answer to that first question. So, question number two, we're talking about future strategies. Okay, so I am all about 10xing your business. I've learned from many, many mentors in my life that it's much easier to 10x your business than 2x your business. And I'll expand on that really quick. So when you 2x your business, you're basically taking what you've learned in the past and bring it to the present reality and basically saying that whatever I'm doing now, I'm just going to try to do it better. And it creates a 2x mentality. However, when you 10x it and you strictly focus on living in the future and bringing that future into the present and talking that language, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with not how we're going to do it, but who we're going to do it with, who is going to get us there in that 10x mentality, which brings us to future strategies based on revenue. So if you could implement any futuristic technology or strategy to boost revenue for events or even your company, what would it be and why?
So I'm going to go big because I know that's how you think, Chris. And one of the things that comes to mind when you ask this question is teleportation. So imagine if we could, during an event, if we could teleport people to give them a hands on experience about whatever we're talking about. And that's obviously like way out there, right? In however, the things we're talking about today felt way out there 20 years ago too. It's way out there. But when you scale it back even a little bit, what it really comes down to is how do we create more interactive experiences at our events? because the days of people just coming to events to hear someone talk and to sit in the audience and to multitask on your phone, I think those are a dying breed. And I think we have to start really thinking differently. And this idea of being able to, let's say we're talking about a topic and we're able to teleport people and go and hands on, okay, let's experience it. All right, let's go back now to our classroom, if you will. So that was my like big, like back to the future type of idea when it comes to future
Well, I
strategies.
know that you have the crystal ball in front of you, Rachel, especially in your position. So I want to know, when is this Star Trek experience going to happen for us all?
Yes.
Are people talking about this already? I'm sure they are in your world, right?
I mean, I could tell you, Chris, but I'd have to kill you. So
Good answer. Okay, I love that. But okay, teleportation, I love it, right?
yeah.
And we are experiencing some crazy things. We're experiencing things through virtual, and of course, this crazy world of AI that we're now living in, where that's going to go. I mean, it really could be quite insane in terms of the technologies that are happening in terms of boosting revenue and future forward. Speaking of AI, I'm going to throw go a left turn real quick on this. Revenue generated AI compatibility interactions that are happening in the event industry that are revenue making opportunities. Are you privy to any?
We are just starting to really get into this AI space, and we're actually launching a certificate in January. And it's really, I think there's two ways to look at AI. There's how is it impacting us right now? And then what's the future opportunity, right? And how can it serve to be, like you're saying, more revenue generating? But where I see the revenue generating happening right now with AI is through efficiencies and through saving time, because right now there's so much that we're doing. And I think people worry about, we automatically go to this place of, oh my gosh, is this going to replace my job? And I'm not going to be able to do my job anymore. Instead of saying, gosh, this could really help streamline a lot of our administrative things that we're spending lots of time on. And if we can streamline some of that, then we can really focus on how do we get to a point where we can teleport during a general session, right? We can look at things a lot differently. So that's where I'm really seeing the opportunities for AI for us from an industry standpoint right now is through creating efficiencies and saving time.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you just a little bit. Just ask them not to negate anything you said, because I spent a lot of time educating myself on AI, and I'm a Bard guy through and through. I'm starting to leave Chat GPT based on so many people living in that red ocean on Chat GPT and trying to be original in the content that's coming out. But utilizing AI in our industry, what capabilities would you trust? When I say that, um, legal, financial, creative, obviously, marketing. Are there certain areas that our industry should really lean into on the AI front that we can trust?
Ooh, that's sort of the $1,000,000 question with trust. I think that that is a lot of what we're looking at right now is I know for organizations, like how much, a lot of people that are out there working with Chat GPT, how much you're putting into that. And if you're putting a lot of your, what I would call trade secrets, it's not probably exactly the best place to be doing that. So when it comes to trust, I think some of that is a little early to tell. I think when it comes to legal, that's not an area that we've been leaning heavily into right now when it comes to marketing, and again, really trying to come up with different creative ideas. And I think sometimes it's the thought starter, because I think oftentimes, like, we're all doing so many things at once, and it used to not be like this, and now it's like you're on a call and you've got three other things happening. You're driving, and unfortunately a lot of people are doing lots of other things. So this idea of being able to get the thoughts going and have that focus point and say, okay, I just need to get my creative juices flowing. Give me some ideas. Because I think the tricky thing too is now, I don't know about you, but whenever I read something or see something, I feel like there are times when I'm like, for sure, this was written by AI, and there's an element to it. There is a human element that is missing. So I think how we use it, we have to be really careful. But I think if we're using it in ways that are low risk, which can be around the marketing and the creativity versus the legal and the things that are, really ideas that we don't want to be telling the world about quite yet from an organizational perspective. That's where I think we have to be careful.
So how can we stand out then? Because if we are all using, you referenced from a creative standpoint, to get the juices flowing, how do we stand
Yeah.
out and still utilize AI with that and live in that blue ocean that I referenced earlier?
You referenced a red
Oh, it's
ocean,
just you're
actually.
right. I wanna live
Um,
in the blue ocean. I'm sorry. I wanna live in the blue ocean, but so many of us are living in that red ocean because we're all pulling from the same data. So, what's your
yeah.
recommendation to make sure that we're standing up? Because at the end of the day, this is all about revenue generating, businesses. So, how do
Yeah.
we do that?
And this is where, I don't know that this is where AI totally, where I like lean heavily on AI. And again, I'm more of a newer user. I would say this year, is whenever, and AI has been around for a long time. We've all used it in a million different ways, but how it's being used today. But I think that, this is again where I think the old becomes new again. I think the best way that you stand out is that you sell to your clients. And I think right now, sometimes we're trying to sell to the masses. And I think we really have to get more of that scalpel approach and invest the time and start really selling directly to our clients because that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity. And it's really about, it's like mass personalization. And the example I always use for this is I just can't imagine, like, shout out to all the caterers out there right now, because can you imagine being in food service right
Mhm.
now with all the different like
Yeah.
restrictions and diets and preferences and all the different things that are going on? But if you think about it, that industry has also done a really good job with it. Now we show up to events and the whole menu is gluten free, or we've got always have vegetarian options and we always have pescatarian. Like there's things we don't think about as much, right? So I think that this idea of figuring out how to get really honestly get granular with your client, because one really loyal client will pay dividends. They will help you find your next clients. And I think sometimes we lose that and it's like, "Oh, I always want more. I always want more." And it's like, "But if I actually invest more into what I have, they'll help me grow and help me get to that more." But you're going to do it with, I think, through a heck of a lot more authenticity than we've seen in the last few
You
years.
know, Rachel, I think that you and I should go on the road because you keep on setting me up for the next question. I'm gonna. We should like start our own little Today Show, like Kathy and Hoda, or whatever they're called, right? You and
Yes.
I. Okay, okay. So which
I'm
good,
in.
good,
I'm
good, good.
in.
Which leads me to my next question because you referenced the relationship you have with the clients, and I'm talking about revenue generating, emotional connection opportunities, and what role does creating an emotional connection with the audience play in revenue strategies?
I honestly, Chris, and this could be also, I'll give you my bias, which you know this, but I have a master's in counseling
Mhm.
psychology, marriage and family. So I'm always going to go to the people side and the connection side of what we do. But I think building emotional connections, it could not be more important. And again, it goes back to all the different demands that everyone has on their time. And if you don't have an emotional connection with someone, if they don't feel like, because if the only reason they're coming to an event is because I want continuing education, there's a million different ways to check that
Mhm.
box to get those credits. There's a different reason why we're gathering in person, and there's a different reason why we're gathering virtually. But if there is not that emotional connection, people just aren't showing up anymore. And I think we saw even a lot of that when we look at workforce. I think what happened with COVID is we realized we probably had a lot of people in our industry that didn't have an emotional connection to it, and those people left. And even though there's like, I think the most recent study says like 60% of our workforce is new in the hospitality industry, which can be overwhelming and staggering, but also a huge opportunity because we have all these new people. But then what that also means is that the 40% that's still here, really loves this industry and loves what we do. And those are the people that are going to help us train the new ones, but realize that those emotional connections and creating those brand ambassadors, that's huge because you can talk about, and I can talk about MPI all day long, and everyone's going to expect me to because that's now who sends me a
Mhm.
paycheck every couple weeks. But when I have people like our community and our volunteers, and when they love MPI, it just goes further than my voice could really ever travel. And I think that's about having an emotional connection. We have people that feel like their career has been helped because they're a part of our organization, which is a really great thing. And when people have an emotional connection, they'll also do things for you when they don't have to. And that's where you get, you think about like volunteers, like, my God, like our organization could never do what we do without volunteers. And we have more than 1,000. So I think that I feel like there's nothing more important than an emotional connection with the people we're doing business with.
Absolutely. And we're going to go right from the fluff to the rough, and we're going to talk about inflation. Okay, it's the I word that's being heard everywhere, and we've been living it around us in terms of how we live our everyday lives. From the food we eat, the cars we buy, the gasoline we put in it, and the list goes on and on and on. So, in the art industry, how are you combating the I word in your role and strategizing how to meet those
Yeah.
revenue goals?
Yes, it is. That definitely is on the tips of tongues right now, that our I word, inflation, right? And I think a lot of the way that we have to really combat this is value. I think value is huge. So you really again have to look at, what are you giving your audience? And what is the value of it? I think this is where for me AI comes in, because it does streamline and create efficiencies which can be recognized through cost savings. So I think that there's a big opportunity there. But I also think we have to empower our people to tell better stories, because right now, I was in a business previously, as you mentioned, for many, many, many years. And we would always have this like argument at the convention center level, right? Like no client ever wanted to pay for internet. But if you asked that same group of people by a show of hands, who gets free internet at home? Well, no one does, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes it's about really explaining what the value is. So instead of looking and saying, "Oh my gosh, my AV costs are going through the roof," it's really looking and saying, "What am I getting for that? And if I have a tech in the room, what value does that bring? And why do I need that?" Because what's happening is a lot of times our people that are boots on the ground are having to go to their leadership and explain things. And what comes back is, "Oh, well, let's just cut this cost. Let's just cut this cost." And I think that if we continue to just beat each other up from a supplier and a planner perspective, it's just not going to work. Like there has to be more of a partnership that says, why is this important? And yes, you could do it this way. Here's what you sacrifice. If you're good with that, great. But if you want this type of an experience, this is why it's important to do XYZ. So I think it's incumbent on us to also do a lot better job communicating the value of what we do, and what type of experience does our client want?
Right, but, it still comes down to the overall budget, right? The money that is readily accessible, and of course, when we can talk about value and the value of what we bring to the table versus another potential supplier that, said client is looking at, is there opportunities, inflationary opportunities that we can embrace and share with our clients that are even beyond just sharing what our value is? And is you referenced earlier about partnerships? Yes, coming together strategically to offer a value package potentially. I hate using the word package. It sounds it sounds too grouped up, but something that provides value from the group of individuals that are providing your resources. Are there opportunities out there, even beyond the value that we just don't think about?
I think you probably, touched on it, which is the conversation we had earlier a little bit, which is through potentially the
Mhm.
partnerships, but also looking and saying, I think also as business owners, we know the areas where we have play. We know the areas where we can cut and not have it be detrimental. We know those areas. So sometimes I feel like we should do a better job of leading with that. I remember years ago we had a conversation, and it was around contracting, and it was like asking one of our partners, okay, what are the 5 pain points, your top 5 pain points of your contract? And that partner just rattled them off. Well, it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this. And it's like, I got an idea. And they had substitutes for every single one of those. So it's like, hey, got a really great idea here. Why don't we just redo the contract? And why don't we just implement those from the start? So I think sometimes what happens is there's this fear, like we all say it, you don't want to leave money on the table. Nobody wants to leave
Mhm.
money on the table. But again, if you can figure out how to price things that work. And hey, this is an area where we know we can cut it. It's not going to impact the experience. It's going to save you money. Then what you're also doing is you're creating a better relationship with that client. If because there's rate integrity that we talk about, but there's also just this idea of just treating people the way we want to be treated. Like if the jacket I'm buying is going to go on sale tomorrow and the salesperson doesn't tell me that when I'm in the mall, well, that's a missed
Mhm.
opportunity. Because I assure you, if you tell me when I come back tomorrow when that's on sale, I'll actually probably spend more. So I think that there's probably more transparency needed, and I think we're afraid of that because we're afraid of the almighty, like, oh, I don't want to leave money on the
Right.
table.
I love that you said transparency because I think it's important to let people that we're working with, partners that we're working with, let them know where we are financially, that our costs have gone up
Yeah,
and not everyone can roll with that.
yeah,
And if we are being transparent
yeah,
about what truly is happening in our business and our revenue generating lives, there is more leniency towards putting that number in front of them, right? On a piece of
yeah,
paper. Right. Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
And when you have those honest conversations, you're building a
Mhm.
partnership, and that's where it's a little bit different because I do feel like, I've always said for years, like there's two sides to every story. And the sooner my team figures out nobody cares about ours, the better. And there is a lot of truth to that. But then there's this side of it that's like, hey, if we're really going to do business together, then let's get a look behind the curtain from both perspectives. Like where do you need to be? Where do I need to be? And I do think that I think that that does create a different level of relationship. And I think right now a lot of our relationships feel really transactional and there's an opportunity to make them more relationship, I
Yeah.
think.
Tap it out EQ, girlfriend, for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about you as we're wrapping this because I've loved all the insight you provided this afternoon for all of our listeners. Your journey, I have watched you and your career for countless years, and as I'm sure you know, you are held up as a mentor to many, a voice for the industry, way to be very future forward thinking. Um, as we're thinking about the future, as everyone is, we're transporting all around the world as you referenced.
Yes.
I want to, since you've been doing this for a long time, maybe think about our history, right? Is there any historical revenue strategies that you would like to bring back into our present that would be amazing strategies for some of our event businesses to adopt today?
You know, that's like I said, I always live in a world too where there isn't really new ideas, there's repurposed ideas. And I think one of the ideas that I think we can bring back more effectively is this idea of bundling things. And like I talked to you, we deal with people that are on different fiscals, right? And so we always have to be really ahead of the game. And sometimes we're chasing that. So imagine if we had the ability to package up things and really put them all out there and say, here's all the amazing opportunities for you based on all the things I know about you for 2024. And instead, what oftentimes happens is we know a little bit and then we're trying to kind of figure out how best to position it. And then new things come up, which is always great. But I think if we had a more forward look on what we were going to be doing and how we can monetize that, I think we have a better chance of getting people to buy in earlier. And I think it's something I think we did a better job of it, but probably when we didn't have as much going on. And now we have a lot more going on. So it's tougher.
Love that. Great advice. So, my final question is that you've seen a lot in your career. And if you had to do something else and potentially even stay
Oh,
in our industry, maybe not even stay in our industry, maybe
no.
it's doing something totally different. What would it be? What would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing now as Chief
Oh,
Revenue Officer of MPI?
I just laugh because I really believed and I still believe it in a lot of ways that when I was at Visit Denver, I had the best job in the industry. And it really tripped me up in a way because I couldn't figure out what something different was going to look like. And I do think if there were I love this industry. And what the reason I love this industry is because the people. Like, that's the
Mhm.
game changer for me. It's the people, and I like, almost my whole circle of friends is built upon this industry. But, it's interesting because if I could do something different, and I feel like I've had the luxury of having such a great career at Visit Denver and now having this great opportunity at MPI, Chris, I would use my master's degree and I would go into marriage and family therapy, if you can believe that. Which, I
Good
think there
for
might be
you.
some opportunity to, yeah, but I really would. I'd use that master's. I say that, but I use that master's every single day because we are in a people-driven industry. But that is sort of something that, I've always had that vision of private practice. So who knows? Maybe that's what my 60s look like. I don't know.
Well, knowing that you're a master at marriage and counseling, okay, it's the holiday season.
Yeah,
So I need
right.
something creative and wonderful to get for my beautiful wife because I have no idea. So you're an expert at creating amazing relationships. Just just a couple clues, please. I just need something.
You know what I'm gonna tell you is I'm gonna tell you to listen, because I can guarantee you that your wife has talked about things that he would love for the past, like, calendar year, and what you need to do is every time you hear her say, "Oh my gosh, I love that," or, "Oh, did you see that handbag?" Whatever, you make a note. You create a little note in your phone, and you listen a little bit better, and you'd be amazed at what you can find out.
I'm gonna absolutely absolutely do that, Rachel. Wow. Okay. I hope you do start that practice because I'm going to be the first person that signs up. You have a really unique tools for me. I'm sure you have a whole bunch of other tools in your belt as well that you can impart. So there you have it, ladies
There
and
you go.
gentlemen. One of my favorite people out there, a true mentor. When I started in this industry, she was doing her thing. I looked up to her, still do as a chief revenue officer at MPI, Rachel Benedick. I couldn't love you more for doing this podcast. We are the event connectors. And wow, we had a connector on our podcast today. Rachel, thank you so much for your time, your energy. And I can't wait to see and visit you in your 60s so I can still stay married. So thank you, Rachel. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Chris. You know I love you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel.